vibe and asters, topics drink from up the sky and heaven grow. This headlessly said,
Charlotte and I were fortunate that one of her doctor friends had to back out of her reservation for the old mansion, and we were able to slip in for the summer by pretending to be his family. A colonial mansion, a hereditary estate, I would say, maybe a classic haunted house, to reach the height of romanticized imagination as I tend to do. But as much as it might satisfy such an atmosphere, in truth it was just an old house that had once been a proud home, but now had fallen to hard times. While I, even as a young boy, enjoyed the intangible, my wife Charlotte is practical in the extreme. She has no patience with religion and intensely ridicules superstition of any nature. Charlotte is a physician, and perhaps, ironically, that is one reason I do not get over my depression. She believes I am a hypochondriac. And what can I say? When a physician of high standing and one's own wife assures friends and relatives that there is really nothing the matter with me but a temporary nervous depression, maybe a slight hysterical tendency, what am I supposed to say without sounding hysterical? So I take pills and air and exercise and am absolutely forbidden to work until I am well again. Personally, I disagree with those ideas. Personally, I believe that having something to focus on and be excited about would do me good. But Charlotte always knows best. She is a doctor. Charlotte says the very worst thing I can do is to think about my condition. And I confess, my internet research always makes me feel worse. The house is a beautiful place. It stands well back from the road, about 3 miles from a quaint town. It makes me think of New England villages that you read about, with hedges and walls and gates that lock and lots of separate little houses. It was reasonably priced, but I think that was because no one maintained it. Our first week would be spent cleaning it up. There is an overgrown yard with large trees, meandering paths, and great covered arbors with seats under them. There were greenhouses too, but they are broken and not usable. There was some legal trouble, I heard, something about the heirs and co-heirs. Anyhow, the place has been empty for years. Such a shame. There is something strange about the house. I can feel it. Unlike Charlotte, I am a romantic and can easily imagine all kinds of things going on in and around the house when it was a vibrant home. That is part of the joy of being here for me. I even tried to get Charlotte to acknowledge the mysterious atmosphere of the house one evening, but she said all she felt was a drafty hall and shut the window. I get frustrated with Charlotte. I think being sensitive is a positive trait. She thinks it is a nervous condition. Everything has to be a condition with her. But Charlotte says I lack self-control, so I take pains to control myself, when she is around, at least, and that makes me very tired. I'm not like her. I don't want to be a doctor, or a patient. I don't like our bedroom particularly. I wanted one downstairs that opened onto the deck that had stained glass insets in the window and a more masculine-feeling wallpaper. But Charlotte said there was only one window and no adjoining bathroom. She was right about that. She usually is. She is very careful and loving, but sometimes treats me like I am her child instead of her husband. It seems I have a pill for each hour in the day. She organizes them for me, and I feel like an asshole not to value her care more. She said we came here solely on my account, that I was to have a perfect rest and all the air I could get. She is big on getting air, and while I like air just fine, I can't revolve my life around it. She insisted that we sleep in the former nursery at the top of the stairs. It is a big, airy room, nearly the entire top floor, with windows that look all directions and all the air and sunshine one could want. There was a nursery first, and then I assume a playroom, an exercise room. The windows are barred for little children, and there are rings and things in the walls. It did have an attached bathroom, which is critical for modern life, though no outlet to plug a razor into. The paint and wallpaper looked like it was probably a boy's room. The wallpaper is missing in places all around the head of the bed, about as far as I can reach, and in a great place low on the other side of the room. It was ugly, and Charlotte agreed we should find so much of new paper. The wallpaper is dull enough to confuse the eye, but pronounced enough to constantly irritate and provoke study. When you follow the uncertain curves for a little distance, they suddenly plunge off at outrageous angles and destroy themselves in unheard of contradictions. The color is terrible, almost revolting, a smoldering, unclean yellow, strangely faded by the sunlight. It is a dulled yet lurid orange in some places, a sickly sulphur in others. No wonder the boy hated it. I should hate it myself if I had to live in this room long. I assume the bald spots are the work of little hands. We have been here 2 weeks, and I am sitting by the window now, up in this atrocious nursery, and there is nothing to stop me from doing whatever I please. Charlotte still works and is away all day, and even some nights when her cases are serious. But I have nothing to do. Lots of free time, but nothing to do. I still feel a bit depressed, though. Charlotte says it will pass. Charlotte does not understand that I really hurt when I am depressed. She feels there is no reason to be depressed, and satisfies her. She thinks I should just stop moping around. I wanted to be helpful around the house, hammering and sawing like other men do. Yet here I am, compared to burning. I suppose Charlotte never was nervous in her life. She laughs at my complaints about the wall. At first she did intend to have the room repapered, but afterwards she said that I was letting it get the better of me, and that it was bad to reinforce my negative fantasy. She said that after the wallpaper was changed, it would be the heavy bed frame, and then the barred windows, and then that gate at the head of the stairs. "You know, the place is doing you good," she said. "And really, honey, I don't think we should renovate a house just for a 3 months rental." "Then I want to move downstairs," I said. "There are better rooms downstairs." Then she took me in her arms and said I was being silly, and that she would have the room looked at by someone from town if it really bothered her. She's right enough about the beds and windows and things. I don't like any of it. It is an airy and bright room. I should get used to it. It isn't so bad, really. Only the wallpaper. Out of one window I can see the yard, those mysterious deep shaded arbors, the flowers and bushes and gnarly trees. Out of another I get a calming view of the bay and a little private pier that belongs to the estate. There is a beautiful shaded lane that runs from the house. I always imagine I see people walking in these numerous paths and arbors, but Charlotte has cautioned me not to give way to my imagination. She says that with my imaginative power and habit of story making, a nervous weakness like mine is sure to lead to all kinds of complications, and that I ought to use my will and good sense to focus on real things. So I try. I think sometimes that if I were only well enough to work a little, it would relieve the pressure of abundant ideas and rest me. But I find I get pretty tired when I try. The drugs make it hard. It is so discouraging not to have any companionship. When I get really well, Charlotte says we will ask my cousin and his wife down for a visit. But she says she would as soon put fireworks in my pillowcase as to let those energetic people around now. I wish I could get well faster. This wallpaper looks to me as if it understood what a vicious influence it has on me. There is a curious spot where the pattern reminds me of a broken neck and two bulbous eyes staring at me upside down. I notice how it moves, up and down and sideways they crawl, and those absurd, unblinking eyes are everywhere. There is one place where two sheets don't match, and the eyes go up and down the line, one a little higher than the other. I never saw so much expression in an inanimate thing before. I used to lie awake as a child and get more entertainment and fear out of a blank wall and plain furniture than most children could find in a toy store. I remember what a kindly wink the knobs of our big old bureau used to have, and there was one chair that always seemed like a strong friend. I used to feel that if any of the other things looked too fierce, I could always hop into that chair and be safe. The wallpaper, as I mentioned, is torn off in spots, and the floor is scratched, and gouged, and splintered. The plaster itself is dug out here and there, and this great heavy bed, which is all we found in the room, looks as if it had been through a war. The bed is nailed to the floor. But I don't mind it a bit. I read the paper. It has a kind of sub-pattern in a different shade, a particularly irritating one, visible only in certain lights, but not clearly even then. But in the places where it isn't faded and when the sun is at a certain angle, I can see a strange, formless sort of figure that seems to skulk about behind that conspicuous front design. Well, the 4th of July is over. Charlotte has set up a room for herself downstairs so she can come and go as she needs without bothering me. She is so thoughtful. Being a doctor is demanding. We no longer sleep in the same bed. Sex has become rare, as the drugs all but made me lose interest, other than an occasional quick jerk-off in the early morning light. This is not easy for me to admit, but recently, when I was alone at the house, there was a knock on the door. I answered it, and a young man stood there with a large box. "Mr. Gilman, your wife asked that I bring these groceries out to you because she thinks she will be stuck at the hospital tonight," he announced very formally. I had not spoke to another person in a long time other than Charlotte, and invited him in for a cup of coffee or a Dr. Pepper. He said he has always wanted to see the inside of the house, that it was a legend in the town. I ended up giving him a tour instead of making coffee. He was constantly expressing how beautiful it was, and his comments even made me see it with fresh eyes. The house is amazing. When we reached the top floor, I showed him my room. He walked in slowly. "Oh my God. This is the room." I looked at him and asked what he meant. He turned pale. "I think I better be going now. I'm feeling dizzy." I said, "Here, lie down," as I guided him to the bed. He closed his eyes and continued breathing deeply, but looked like he might have fainted. I looked at his youthful face. He was probably only 16 or 17. As I studied him, I found my own breathing getting slower and deeper. My skin was feeling warm. I felt an urge to lightly brush his face with my hand. I was getting an erection at seeing moisture on his soft lips. The idea passed through my mind that I could unbutton his shirt so that he could breathe better. That was a crazy thought. What was happening to me? I had not had sexual feelings toward another guy before. I controlled my inclinations and helped the young man up. He seemed to feel okay once we entered the hall again. I have to confess that after he left, I returned to the room and lay on the bed and masturbated to an intense orgasm, after which I broke into a deep cry that made my shoulders shake. Charlotte is kept at work very often by serious cases and is home less and less, so I walk a little in the garden or down that London road, sit on the porch under the roses, and lie down up here. I'm getting really fond of the room in spite of the wallpaper, perhaps because of the wallpaper. I've given up on trying to keep my razor charged. Beards are back in fashion anyway. I lie here on this great immovable bed and follow that pattern with my eyes for hours. It is as good as gymnastics. I start, we'll say, at the bottom, down in the corner over there where it has not been touched, and I determine for the 1,000th time that I will follow that pointless pattern to some sort of conclusion. I still remember the young man who delivered the groceries. I picture him lying on the bed, his breathing and his eyes visibly moving under soft white eyelids. I wish he would return. Half the time, I am lazy and lie around too much. Charlotte says I mustn't lose my strength and has me on vitamins. She loves me more than I deserve and hates that I am sick. I tried to have a real, earnest, reasonable talk with her the other day and tell her how I wish she would let me visit my cousin. But she said I would not like being there once I went. She is likely correct. The idea of going is better than actually being there. It is getting to be a great effort for me to think straight. Just this depression, I suppose. And the drugs. Charlotte took me by the hand and led me upstairs. She tucked me into bed and sat by me and read until I fell asleep. There are things in that wallpaper that nobody knows but me. Behind that outside pattern, the dim shapes get clearer every day. It is always the same shape. It is like a youth stooping down and moving about behind that pattern. I don't like it. I begin to think Charlotte and I should leave this house. It is so hard to talk with Charlotte about my feelings because she is so busy and because she loves me so much. The moonlight. The moon shines in all around just as the sun does. I hate to see it sometimes. It moves so slowly and always comes in by one window or another. I kept still and watched the moonlight on that undulating wallpaper. The faint figure behind seemed to shake the pattern as if he wanted to get out. I got up quietly and went to feel if the paper did move. It was not moving, but still I could see that it seemed to move. The next morning I told Charlotte that I wanted to leave. She said, "Our lease will be up in 3 weeks. The repairs are not done at home, and I cannot possibly leave the hospital just now. You really are better, whether you can see it or not. I am a doctor and I can tell. You are gaining color, your appetite is better. So we can't leave?" How can I? It is only 3 weeks more. Really, honey, you are better. Better in body, perhaps, I said, and stopped. She looked at me with such a stern, reproachful face that I could not say another word. "Please, for my sake as well as for your own, say that you will never for one instant let that idea enter your mind. You already overact fantasy situations. You should trust me as your doctor and mother." On a wallpaper pattern like this, by daylight, there is a lack of sequence, a defiance of law that is a constant irritant to a normal mind. The color is hideous enough, and unreliable enough, and infuriating enough, but the pattern is torturing. You think you have it mastered, but just as you get well underway and following, it turns a back somersault, and there you are. It slaps you in the face, knocks you down, and tramples upon you. It is like a bad dream. The outside pattern is a florid arabesque, reminding one of a fungus. If you can imagine a toadstool in joints, an interminable string of toadstools budding and sprouting in endless convolutions. That is, sometimes. There is one truly peculiar thing about this wallpaper, a thing nobody seems to notice but me. It changes as the light changes. When the sun shoots in through the east window, I always watch for that first long, straight ray. It changes so quickly that I never can quite believe it. That is why I always watch it. The moon shines in all night when there is a moon. I wouldn't know it was the same paper. At night, in any kind of light, in twilight, candlelight, overhead light, and worst of all by moonlight, it becomes bars. The outside pattern and the man behind it is as plain as can be. I didn't realize for a long time what showed in the paper, that dim sub-pattern in the back, but now I am quite sure it is a teenage boy. By daylight he is subdued, quiet. I imagine it is the pattern that keeps him still. It is so puzzling. It keeps me staring for hours. I lie down ever so much now. Charlotte says it is good for me to sleep all I can. Indeed, she started the habit by making me lie down for an hour after each meal. I believe it is a very bad habit. I don't sleep. The fact is, I am getting a little afraid of Charlotte. She seems very distant sometimes. It strikes me occasionally just as a scientific hypothesis that perhaps it is the wallpaper. I've caught her also staring at the wallpaper. What is funny is that life is very much more exciting now than it used to be. You see, I have something to look forward to. I really do eat better and am more quiet than I was when I had nothing. Charlotte is so pleased to see me improve. I had no intention of telling her it was because of the wallpaper. I no longer want to leave until I have figured it out. I'm feeling ever so much better. I don't sleep much at night, for it is so interesting to watch developments. But I sleep a good deal in the daytime. There are always new shoots on the fungus and new shades of yellow all over it. I cannot keep count of them, though I have tried. It is the strangest yellow. It makes me think of all the yellow things I ever saw. Not beautiful ones like buttercups, but old, foul, bad yellow things. But there is something else about that paper, the smell. I noticed it at the moment we came into the room, but with so much air and sun it was not bad. Now we have had a week of fog and rain, and whether the windows are open or not, the smell is here. It drifts through the house. I find it floating in the dining room, sneaking through the living room, hiding in the hall, lying in wait for me on the stairs. It gets into my beard. Such a peculiar odor, too. I have spent hours in trying to analyze it, to decide what it smelled like. It is not bad at first, and very gentle, but quite the subtlest, most enduring odor I ever smelled. In this damp weather, it is awful. I wake up in the night and find it hanging over me. It used to disturb me at first. I thought seriously of burning the house down to escape it. But now I am used to it. The only source I can think of is the color of the paper, a yellow smell. There is a very funny mark on this wall low down near the baseboard, a streak that runs around the room. It goes behind every piece of furniture except the bed, straight as if it had been rubbed over and over. I wonder how it was done and who did it and why they did it. Round and round and round, round and round and round. I really have discovered something at last. The front pattern does move. The guy behind shakes it. Sometimes I think there are a great many men behind, and sometimes only one, and he crawls around fast, and his crawling shakes it all over. Then in the very bright spots he keeps still, and in the very shady spots he just takes hold of the bars and shakes them surprisingly hard. And all the time he is trying to climb through, but nobody can climb through that pattern. It strangles him. I think that is why it has so many heads. If those heads were covered or taken off, it would be easier to escape. I think the guy gets out sometime, and I'll tell you why. I've seen him. I can see him out of every one of my windows. It is the same man I know. He spies on me from the window. That top pattern should be pulled off from the under one. I began peeling the paper from the wall. There are only 2 more days before we leave for me to get this paper off, and I believe Charlotte is beginning to notice. I don't like the way she looks at me. I don't want to even talk to her. Charlotte stayed at the hospital overnight. As soon as the moon rose and that poor thing began to crawl and shake the pattern, I got up and ran to help him. I pulled and he shook. I shook and he pulled, and before morning we had peeled off yards of that paper, a strip about as high as my head and half around the room. And then, when the sun came and that awful pattern began to laugh at me, I declared I would finish it today. We go away tomorrow, and workers will move all my furniture downstairs so as to leave things as they were before we moved in. Soon there will be nothing left but that great nailed-down bedstead with the canvas mattress we found. To keep the movers out, I have locked the door and thrown the key out the window. When Charlotte comes home, I want to be able to show her what I have been talking about, the proof. I've got a rope up here. If that kid does get out and tries to get away, I can tie him down. I remove all my clothes in order to keep them from getting dirty from the rotting wallpaper. I folded them neatly to please Charlotte and put them on the bed. I feel incredibly free for the first time in so long. But I forgot I could not reach far up the wall without anything to stand on. This bed will not move. I tried to lift and push it until I was exhausted, and then I got so angry I bit off a little piece at one corner, but it hurt my teeth. Then I peeled off all the wallpaper I could reach standing on the floor. It sticks horribly to me, and the pattern seems to enjoy it. All those strangled heads and bulbous eyes and waddling fungus growths. The paper pieces are stuck all over my body, so I suspect I resemble a giraffe. I am getting angry enough to do something desperate. Jumping out the window would be an admirable exercise, but the bars are too strong to even consider attempting. Besides, I wouldn't do it. Of course not. I know well enough that an action like that is improper and might be misconstrued. Charlotte would think I was crazy instead of understanding that I was angry or frustrated. I don't like to look out of the windows anyway. There are too many of those men outside. They want to cover me in kisses, but I don't want their hands and mouths all over me. I stand at the window and shake my penis just to torment them. Now I am securely fastened by my rope. I suppose I shall have to get back behind the pattern when it becomes night, but that is going to be difficult. It is so pleasant to be out in this great room and move around as I please. I don't want to go outside. I won't. Outside, you have to lie on the ground, and everything is green instead of yellow, and the men with hot hands are everywhere. But here, I can slide smoothly along the floor, and my shoulder just fits in that long tear around the wall, so I cannot lose my way. There's Charlotte at the door. It's no use, Charlotte. You can't open the door. It is locked to keep the movers out. She is being so noisy. It would be a shame to break down that beautiful door. Charlotte, I said in the gentlest voice. The key is down by the front steps. I threw it out the window. That silenced her for a few minutes. Then she said very quietly, "Open the door, honey." I can't. The key is down by the front door. And then I said it again, several times, very gently and slowly, and said it so often that she had to go look for it. She found it, of course, and burst into the room. It was my mother. She was angry that I was tearing off the wallpaper, that I was naked without permission. She demanded I put my hands behind my back where she tied and attached them to one of the rings on the wall. I begged her not to bite me, but she did anyways. She bit me all over and with long, rough strokes milked me like a cow. "I'm out!" I shouted at her as she licked her hand, "and you can't put me behind the wallpaper ever again!" I lifted my head proudly and whispered, "I'm out, Charlotte. I'm out." I'm out, Charlotte.